Welcome back to another episode of Stacking Dennys. I'm Jordan McAbee of RotoBaller. My co-host Nick Giffen of the Action Network is back, and Martin Truex Jr. is back in victory lane for his third win of the season, his first ever at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. We've seen him dominate that racetrack many times in the past. He's led over 100 laps, I think 5 or 6 times, but Truex, truly the dominant car from start to finish at New Hampshire, getting the win. Getting, like I said, his third win of the season. He is now the points leader. Joey Logano finishes second. Kyle Larson with a quiet third-place finish there. Kevin Harvick with some questionable strategy in that race ends up finishing fourth after getting track position late. And Brad Keselowski with another top 6 finish. I think that's 8 of the last 9 for Keselowski at New Hampshire. He rounds out the top 5. A lot of people didn't like this race, Nick, and I think we're both going to be on the same page here of not really understanding why a lot of people did not like this race. Was it a one-dominator race? Did Truex absolutely have the best car? Yes. Did that make it an awful race? No. And I'll tell you what, from what we've seen from the short track package this year, there have been some really boring races, and there was a ton of action happening at New Hampshire. And when you look at these short flat tracks, Phoenix is obviously super not, I would say not competitive is probably the best term that I can use for Phoenix. It's not super competitive. Richmond obviously has the tire fall off, so we see actually the cars strategy come into play and then people being able to pass. But I'll tell you what, New Hampshire, we saw some good stuff, and I think NASCAR's moving in the right direction. Not only with this short track package and maybe any adjustments that they're making, but also Goodyear. I know Rodney Childers, Kevin Harvick's crew chief, mentioned that they brought a very softer tire to this race, and that's definitely a step in the right direction because this was a very good race. I mean, we had some drama. We had Ryan Blaney running top 5 all day. He had issues late. We had Christopher Bell wreck late, and just that team kept shooting themselves in the foot after going into the race as the favorite. But in the end, it was Martin Truex Jr. in victory lane. What did you think of that race? Did you like it?
Oh, yeah. It was so good. And I don't care if Truex was the only dominator and one stage 1, one stage 2 won the race. That was a damn good race. Like you said, 3 wide throughout the field, sometimes 4 wide, and not just on restarts, like during portions of long runs, etc. You mentioned the softer tire. That was one thing I talked about on Running Hot when Stevie mentioned over on Running Hot, the podcast there, that NASCAR, the test was to have a tire that has more grip and doesn't need to be run at such low air pressures for that to happen. So what that means is a softer compound. What that means is more fall off. And we did see that. We saw laps in the 30-second bracket all the way to the end of a long run, laps in the 32-second bracket. So just over a second of fall off. It was like high 30s to low 32s. So, a second and a couple tenths fall off, which is really good for New Hampshire, right? New Hampshire is kind of in that track age where it hasn't quite aged enough to have natural wear, at least at a high enough rate, but it's getting there. It's like between Phoenix and Richmond. So it's going to continue to even get better and better racing, I think, at New Hampshire. And that tire compound was really good. Obviously, the low downforce package as well, I think helps because drivers have to get off the throttle, get on the brake. And we know when drivers have more input, the racing is better. So I thought it was a really good race, even though Martin Truex Jr. dominated and rightly won. Thought it was a very good race. I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was like I said, there was also some good surprises in this race. Most notably, and I have to mention this, is Cole Custer in that Rick Ware racing car. He didn't get the finish. He finished 35th. He was legitimately running around the top 20 during that race. He looked good in practice. There's always the Rick Ware Racing, are they really going to have the car during the race? They had the car, and Custer looked good. I have to mention that because especially comparing him to Ryan Newman, who was in the other Rick Ware Racing car. Newman was absolute shit, and I know sportsbooks got hammered with Ryan Newman's bet, specifically Bet MGM. And I'm still confused about that and how and why anybody was betting Ryan Newman.
I told you that was
even if he was in
my whine about it, but just unbelievable. I mean, This is a guy who hasn't performed in years in the Cup Series. And then he takes a year off. He comes back as a part-time guy. He's 45 years old. He's well beyond the age curve. And he's running for a backmarker team. I don't know what people... Did they think they were getting Ryan Newman of 10, 15 years ago? I just didn't understand that at all. Because, yes, he's good at New Hampshire. But you can't polish a turd, right? Like, even Cole Custer, doing very well, was running in the high 20, like 21, 23, somewhere in that neighborhood, doing really well, right? You just cannot polish a turd.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't understand it. I wouldn't have even bet Ryan Newman if he was in like a Hendrick car or if he was in a Gibbs car. Because the Joe Gibbs Toyotas were the fastest cars all weekend long. Christopher Bell, Martin Truex Jr. were above, beyond everybody else. Hamlin was up there, and then Gibbs showed really good speed in practice. Didn't get the finish. He ended up 27th, but Gibbs did show that great speed in practice, and he was working his way through the field throughout the day. One guy that came around and finished in the top 10, Chase Briscoe. It's been almost 2 months, or maybe even longer than 2 months, since Chase Briscoe's finished in the top 10. Again, we get rid of we get out of the intermediate package. We get him in this, short flat track, short track package. Briscoe comes back to life. That's the only way you can describe what's going on with Chase Briscoe this year. So it's something to keep in mind, especially for DFS, because when we go through these long stretches of Briscoe performing like shit, and then we get to a track like New Hampshire where he has the tools to perform well, everyone's going to be off him. So Bubba Wallace, another guy getting the top 10 there. The Toyotas, like, they were great all weekend long. Tyler Reddick as well. Like I said, Denny Hamlin was there, and Austin Dillon lucked into a top 10 finish. I couldn't believe it. He was running garbage all day. He got bailed out by that late caution, but I guess you got to give credit
27th in green flag speed. Yeah, 27th in green flag speed for Austin Dillon. That was certainly a track position, strategy move there at the end that got him that finish.
One guy that had a great practice and turned around and disappointed a little bit in qualifying, but then came back in the race and was looking super sporty, ended up 13th, Michael McDowell. Got to give him a shout out here. I know you made a bet on him already for Pocono, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But Michael McDowell looked really good. I didn't see what happened between him and Ryan Preece. Did you catch that? I just saw like the Twitter aftermath. I think maybe like McDowell got into Preece late or something and pissed him off. But Michael McDowell looked really good. Like I said, he finished in 13th. But any other takeaways you got from that race? Do you think that I guess one more takeaway I have is, when we were at Phoenix, and even, I think Richmond, I know I was concerned, I'm pretty sure you were as well, that Penske did not have the speed that they did to win the championship last year. I think this race on Monday at New Hampshire definitely proved that they have that speed again. Maybe they were testing something at Phoenix and Richmond. That should be the case. Joey Logano finished second. Ryan Blaney running, top 3 all day. I think it was when it comes to average running position, it was Truex, Blaney, Logano. I think was 1, 2, 3 if I remember right. Yep. So great day out of Team Penske. Logano getting the finish there. Blaney ended up 22nd. I don't remember what happened to him, but I'm sure it was something stupid like a tire or something.
And for Blaney, kind of a rough stretch here. 4 of the last 5 finishes for him, 22nd or worse. New Hampshire, of course, being 22nd. But you're right. Team Penske with the speed. Ryan Blaney 3rd in average green flag speed. Joey Logano 4th in average green flag speed. And we're not really going to know until I do my flag stuff if they actually were even better than Eric Almirola, because Almirola, remember, crashed out. So we don't know what had happened on those later laps with his green flag speed. So really good job by Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano. I guess the big takeaway for me was Chevy should feel a little worried right now. They weren't that good. Kyle Larson, best average green flag speed of a Chevy, 7th. But nobody else in the top 12 as far as Chevy is concerned. We had William Byron in 13th in average green flag speed. Chevy was a disaster. It was not good.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up. Hendrick Motorsports overall, Larson, he ended up 3rd. He came like they did like they always do. Larson just gets better as the race goes on. But I will note, when you look at Kyle Larson this year, ever since his All-Star race win, He's led a total of 16 laps in the last 8 races. Has these other teams closed the gap? If you remember back to the Coca-Cola 600 and our show from that, we said that's when teams either, typically we see a shift. And I honestly think we've seen that shift. And
yes,
Larson's still getting the finishes. But I think there should be some concern here because Chase Elliott was junk this weekend. He ended up 12th, but he was junk. Alex Bowman was junk. William Byron was good at the start. I'm pretty sure I didn't see anything official, but they had those power steering issues in practice. I wouldn't be surprised if they happened again because I feel like he just, he finished second in stage 1 and then just fell off. And I don't remember anything significant happening there for Byron. I could be wrong, but yeah, I think you're totally right. Chevy as a whole, only 2 finishers in the top 10, Larson in third, Austin Dillon, like we said, lucked into a top 10 finish, finishing 9th. So, definitely something to keep an eye on because, everybody, especially in the DFS world, is so in their mind is, Chevy's going to dominate this race. We're just not seeing that. We definitely didn't see that at New Hampshire. We've definitely seen a shift in speed.
Yeah, certainly. I think, it's also super concerning because now Chase Elliott, and you remember, what was it, 4 weeks ago, people were like, oh, Chase Elliott can still make it in on points. Well, last 2 races, he's dropped essentially pace to, he hasn't dropped points, but he's dropped pace to the playoff cut line there. And now with 6 races left, he is 60 points out of the cut line. And 4 weeks ago, he only needed to gain 8.4 points per race. Now he needs to gain 10 points per race. That's almost going to be impossible without a win. So Chase Elliott absolutely has to be in win-or-in mode. But then also, when we're talking Chevy and how bad it's been, Alex Bowman, still no top 10 since coming back from his injury. And that coincides, like you said, right with the All-Star race, right with the 600. That is the downturn of Chevy, so to speak, or at least of Hendrick Motorsports. And, obviously Chevy has had some good performances. Ross Chastain grabbing that win at Nashville, for example, is one good example. But even Ross Chastain, 6 bad finishes in his last 7 races, 22nd or worse in 6 of the last 8. So Chevy really, has some work to do. They were easily the cream of the crop to start the year, but it's very clear Ford has caught up, and Toyota's still Toyota. I mean, Toyota and Chevy were obviously the best at the start of the year. I would say with Chevy on top. And if Toyota's constantly making little gains and Chevy hasn't really gained, that, I think, pushes Toyota above Chevy right now, and Ford has caught up to Chevy, I think, pretty close. Maybe still a touch behind, maybe not. It's tough to say, but absolutely, like you said, right around that 10 races in or the All-Star race. It's a little different each year, but in that neighborhood of like the 10th race to the All-Star break, the shift occurs, and it's occurred again this year.
Yeah, speaking of Ross Chastain, obviously he had a great weekend at Nashville. He won the race. He had the best car. He hasn't had speed anywhere else, and it's weird. Since the All-Star break, he just hasn't had speed. He didn't have speed at New Hampshire at all. Started 31st, ended up 23rd. Same thing at Atlanta. He didn't have speed. It's weird, and I'm really interested to see, to give a preview to the end of this show, I think I'm going to pick Ross Chastain as my winner for Pocono because it seems like this team and it seems like this car, Martin Truex Jr. won both stages at New Hampshire. He comes out this weekend. He wins both stages at New Hampshire, wins a race. I don't see this year where we're seeing major shifts in teams that had races figured out last year and tracks figured out last year where there's enough going on that the guys that were great at it last year aren't great again this year at the same tracks.
Yeah,
Ross Chastain, if you remember
that's
back,
a good point.
If you remember back to Pocono last year, he had a great car and he wrecked out. I think he led 20, 30 laps. He had a great car. So I'm really interested to see what Ross Chastain does this weekend. But yeah, that him falling off on speed is just weird, and it kind of reminds me of William Byron last year and how much that team was experimenting. But it wouldn't make any sense for Ross Chastain to be experimenting.
Yeah, maybe not. Obviously with the win now, but certainly before the win, he wasn't experimenting. You're right, and he had that run of. He did win a stage at Darlington. He was pretty good at Darlington, but then The 600 Gateway wasn't quite as good. Sonoma finished 10th, but never really was competitive. Obviously, the win at Nashville. But since Nashville hasn't been fast at all. So I actually do wonder, is he experimenting? Because he's in zero danger of falling out of the playoff picture. None.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the issue here is where you are in the playoff standings when you want to accumulate more playoff points rather than experiment.
Because I don't think it worked out for William Byron very well last year. So, but this year he's leading the series with 4 wins. But shifting over, to the point standings here, like I said, Martin Truex Jr. is now on top. Byron is second in points. Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., and Byron, the only guys with 3 or more wins. Busch and Truex have 3. Byron has 4. I don't think we're going to get to our 17 winners that I'd like to see, but hey, anything can happen. But going back to Chase Elliott, I saw a TikTok of everyone's favorite spotter, Brett Giffen, talking about, that was a solid eye roll there.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. But he was talking about Chase Elliott and pointing his way into the playoffs. And he was trying to make the argument that does he even want to point his way into the playoffs because they're not competitive. They're not going to win the championship this year, in his opinion. But I don't understand that mindset because why wouldn't you want to make the playoffs? It's not like it hurts you to make these playoffs.
Exactly.
Other than getting knocked out the first round. But if you pull a Ryan Newman and get to the final, even though you're, junk for most of the year, not junk, but, mid-tier most of the year, that's a successful season. If you can, quote-unquote, steal a championship, there's, if you think about it, Chase Elliott just has to get to Phoenix. If he gets to Phoenix and he's the only Hendrick driver, who had the best cars at Phoenix earlier this year? Hendrick. It was William Byron and Kyle Larson. So I don't understand that mindset. And I'm personally rooting for Chase Elliott to point his way in just to kind of see I want to see the fan reaction and panic of how quote unquote much of a joke this system is if someone can miss that much time and still make the playoffs.
I mean, we've already seen it with Rowdy, right? He missed a large chunk of the season, won one of his first races back, and ended up winning the championship back in 2018, I think it was. So, we get to see it again, though, and we get to see it with, the fan base's favorite, most popular driver. I will say not competitive is kind of weird because Chase Elliott has 5 top 5s in 13 races run. If I look at Martin Truex Jr.'s first 13 races run this year, 2 top 5s. So, and Truex currently leads the points. If I look at William Byron's first 13 races run this year, 4 top 5s. So I understand when we say not competitive, he's finished better than he's run in a lot of those top 5s, but sometimes that's all it takes to advance in the playoffs. I mean, think of Ryan Newman back in 2014, I think it was the first year where we had the championship 4. He just pointed his way in to the championship 4 with 0 wins that year. Chase Elliott, if he makes the playoffs, he can do that. He has that caliber of talent. He has that caliber of equipment. And I don't know what got into Ryan Newman that year in 2014, but Chase Elliott is far superior to 2014 Ryan Newman.
That's the thing with when we talk, when I was saying Chase Elliott quote unquote not being competitive, he's finishing top 5. Like you said, he has 5 top 5 finishes this year. He's not running top 5 though. He has 38 laps led this year total. He's completed 3,035. That's a little more than 1%. And 18 of those laps were at Talladega. So it's weird when you see William Byron dominating leading laps, you see Kyle Larson dominating leading laps, and then all of a sudden Chase Elliott's not leading laps, and you have to start wondering, what the heck's going on. That's kind of
totally agree.
I think with you. I mean, a big part of it is qualifying. His average start this year is 18.7. He only has 1 start outside of Daytona better than 10th, and that was Charlotte, where he started 6th. That obviously plays a big role in where or how many laps you lead, because if you have to spend the first half of the race trying to get to the front, you're obviously not leading laps. But keeping an eye on these point standings, it's getting interesting at the cutoff line. Like, this is going to be fun to watch with the remaining races before these playoffs if it stays this tight. Right now, Bubba Wallace is in. Michael McDowell is in. They are separated by 1 point. Daniel Suarez is out. He is separated from Michael McDowell by 1 point. We have 3 drivers on the bubble separated by 2 points. And then A.J. Allmendinger sitting there at 18th behind Suarez. He's only 19 points behind Suarez. That's one race.
Yeah.
Ty Gibbs.
And within one race, right? So Michael McDowell has 432 points, and you can gain, let's say, realistically, 50 points, 55 points a race tops. That puts all the way down to maybe Justin Haley within one race, and then obviously Chase Elliott is in the picture, or even Austin Cindric in 22nd, technically. So all the way through 23rd, theoretically could still make the playoffs. 16th and Bubba Wallace in 15th could fall out, right? He's only 1 point ahead of Michael McDowell. So just because we think Chase Elliott has the ability to pace his way in. So I would say anybody from Chase Elliott all the way up to Bubba Wallace could be in or out when all is said and done, barring any new winners. I'm talking just on points. Now, obviously, if we get new winners, that changes the calculus even more, and then it becomes even more wild because you get to where that cutoff, instead of some guys being 50 points out, now there's some guys who are 10, 12 points to the good or 14 points to good, and other guys are 30 points out instead of 50 points out, So if we get a surprise winner, it gets even more interesting. This playoff race is going to be absolutely incredible to watch over the next 6 races.
Yeah, because, you look at the guys above Bubba Wallace in points right now would be Chris Buescher. He has almost a 100-point gap from Bubba Wallace. So I think Buescher's good, barring an epic collapse, as is Keselowski. Harvick's obviously good. He's up there. But looking at the remaining races before these playoffs starts, we got Pocono this weekend. We got Richmond after that. Then we got Michigan. I don't think we're going to see any surprise winners at any of these tracks. Indy Road
Pocono
course,
could always throw a wrench in with some weird strategy or late caution, but you're right. I don't think we'll see a weird one at Richmond or Michigan, and almost surely not at Pocono. It's not like we're going to have a fog out, but there's some small chance we could have a weird one at Pocono. But you're right. Up until Indy Road course, it's very unlikely we get a surprise winner.
Yeah, so then we have Indy Road course, which can easily become a shit show, and then followed by Watkins Glen. I don't foresee that being a shit show. And then we're going to end at Daytona, where we saw it last year. We saw Austin Dillon take that win. So I am very excited to see what goes on these next 6 races. Like you said, this is such a tight points battle. It's between guys that we honestly, like, not many people were talking about Michael McDowell in the playoff picture coming into this year, and all of a sudden he's right there in the thick of things. So, and even A.J. Allmendinger, I'll throw him in there. I mean, I said he was going to be garbage this year. I remember that, and I still stand by it. But yeah,
he's always capable of winning a road course race for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of, we talked about JGR having a ton of speed right now. When we look at the actual point standings, we got Truex in first, we got Christopher Bell in third, and we got Denny Hamlin in fourth. All 3 of the 4 Joe Gibbs Racing drivers are inside the top 4 in points. And I saw someone tweet this, that, we talk about how good of a season Ty Gibbs is having, but his teammates are top 4 in points, and he's 19th. And I don't want to defend Ty Gibbs, but I think he's outperforming what most young guys do in this new car. And we've seen how much it takes for these guys to get adjusted to this new car. I honestly think Ty Gibbs is outperforming. And, I don't think he's going to make any waves this year, but next year is definitely someone to keep an eye on there with how Joe Gibbs Racing is doing and the speed they have this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just saying, I think Ty Gibbs has definitely outperformed what a lot of other young drivers do. I mean, look how hard. And I know Legacy has not been very good this year, but look how bad Noah Gragson is struggling. Look how bad Harrison Burton has struggled for 2 years. I would say Todd Gilliland has been surprisingly good as well, especially considering the equipment. I think he and Ty Gibbs maybe have been two of the best, rookie / new guys in this next gen car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even like Ryan Preece. Obviously Stewart Haas has their issues, but Preece was hyped up as this awesome, quote unquote, half savior for Stewart Haas, and he's 26th in points. Just not running well. One more thing. Did you see Truex not giving a final or any kind of answer for whether he's going to actually return next year, which I thought was interesting. Did you see that?
I did not.
He was basically super non-committal about it. Said he takes his time with big decisions like that, which obviously someone would, but I forget what media member it was that tweeted about it, but he basically said, he's reading between the lines, and he's like, he doesn't think Truex is going to come back next year. That and that would throw a wrench into things as far as who replaces him. That'd be a fun offseason.
That would be a wild offseason if that were to be the case. And I was actually thinking during the race, because even though Eric Almirola has the option to come back next year, as soon as he got fucked by that lug nut, the ridiculousness of his crew chief telling him, "Yeah, we're good," he wrecks because that thing falls off, and then the crew chief saying, "Actually, we didn't get it." Like, I would just walk out right there if I was that close to retirement and that happened to me. But of course, I'm betting him this week, but that's another story. But to me, I was like, God, Eric Almirola, to me, I feel like that seals his retirement. Even though I don't know, he could come back next year. But that is a big weight on why the hell am I doing this? Maybe it'd just be better if I had just stayed home this weekend and been with my family and done things that I could have done instead of dealing with this bull crap. And it sucks for him because he had a hell of a good race. Obviously, he's amazing at New Hampshire, but and especially compared to his practice times, he just destroyed in that race. He was second. Like I said, we don't know where he would have ended up in green flag speed. I have yet to do flags, but he obviously will be top 5 in flags for sure, if not top 2 or 3. He had an absolutely amazing race. We know he's good at New Hampshire, but even I was surprised at how good he was this weekend.
Yeah, it was like you said. His practice wasn't great. It was good, and we know how he is on short flat tracks. Obviously, he has speed. I'm looking up loop data here quick because I want to say so. Green flag speed. Almirola was still second in green flag speed. Obviously, that has to do with his wrecking out in the middle of the race, but still, he had a great car. That's I think that news broke today, by the way, speaking of Almirola, is if he retires after this year, that McDowell would be is the favorite to replace him, which I found not surprising, but kind of interesting.
So you lagged out there and I didn't hear a word you said.
Oh, my bad. So basically what I saw on J-Ski today was that if Eric Almirola decides to retire at the end of this year, Michael McDowell's the favorite to replace him, which I found not very surprising, but it's interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That would be it. Oh man, I'm speechless. It's hard to form my thoughts around that. I do enjoy Eric Almirola. I think he's always been a fun underdog to root for. So I don't want him to retire, but I also kind of want him to retire because I want to see Michael McDowell in that car.
Right. You want to see what Michael McDowell can do.
What he can do. Yeah. I want to see what he can do. And, McDowell is having a career year. We talked about this the last time we were, on Stacking Dennys together. I know it's been a couple weeks. But Michael McDowell is absolutely having a career year. I mean, he's never been inside the playoff picture on points. And he is now this deep into the season.
Second year in a row, too, because you remember we talked about him extensively last year. And
then, though, he wasn't this far into the playoff picture.
Right, and you know what's interesting is he actually has a worse average finish this year than he did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had
51 stage points this year.
Yeah, it's hey, we love the underdogs on this show, and he lost his crew chief. We talked about that with his crew chief going to Alex Bowman's team. So
he had 23 stage points all of last year. He's more than doubled that this year, and we're not even all the way through the season. I mean, we're just over halfway through the season. We're at 20 races of a 36 race season, and he's more than doubled his stage points. That's pretty big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's only with two road courses run. Yeah,
so it's pretty safe to assume that he's probably going to get some more as each road course goes, because he's that's the interesting thing this year is looking at betting lines, and it's like the guys are finally getting respect. It's nice to see the underdogs getting respect in the betting lines, because guys like Bubba Wallace actually being a favorite at super speedways and tracks where he shows a ton of speed, same as Michael McDowell at now road courses, because McDowell was always kind of an underdog at road courses. Now he's a legitimate contender, and it's cool to see. I want to see him win one, just like I want to do. Like I want to see Todd Gilliland win one. It'd be awesome. But
you mentioned the betting respect and stuff like that. Obviously, I bet Michael McDowell for Pocono, but I need to remind myself to refresh FanDuel for their top 10s to see if they give an even better number on McDowell top 10, because their top 3 is very long on Michael McDowell. So I think if they scale that to top 10s, we could see better than 8-1, which is where I grabbed him. I initially grabbed him at Caesars. I wrote in the article Bet365 because I moved line at Caesars and I knew I would, but I knew in Bet365, people could still grab it there. But very curious. Obviously, FanDuel has dropped lines while we've recorded the podcast a lot of times, but very curious if they'll drop top 10s while we're recording and see if we can get Michael McDowell even longer than 8-1. I was going to go more than half a unit that I put on him, but then I was like, well, maybe FanDuel will give us something even better when I saw the top 3. So I was originally going to probably do 3/4 of a unit. So I think I'll top off a quarter unit on McDowell's top 10 if FanDuel gives something better than 8-1. So we'll keep an eye out on that while we're recording this podcast.
Yeah, it's not like you said. It's not like it hasn't dropped before. But speaking of betting, let's go ahead and get into this week's Wine About It, because I know yours has to do with betting, and you're betting at New Hampshire this past weekend. So I'm going to give you the floor here and let you go first with Wine About It. Presented by LuvaBella Winery. You guys know that if you're a longtime listener or even a recent listener. But yeah, Nick, what is your Wine About It this week?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go with my favorite, the bourbon barrel-aged Merlot. I don't drink this unless I'm on Stacking Dennys pretty much because I want to savor it for these moments here. But so my Wine About It, so I've gotten shut out on betting for 2 straight weeks, right? And I also got shut out on the IndyCar race this past weekend. So here's the thing. Getting shut out at Atlanta, whatever, right? Like, I had Bubba Wallace top Toyota, and he was running top Toyota when the wreck happened right before the rain caution. So I don't feel bad about that. Do I feel bad about New Hampshire? Yes. Wine About It is about me this week. Do I think I had bad process? Mostly not, but I think I was incredibly impulsive for a specific reason. Y'all remember I wasn't on Stacking Dennys last week. Thank you, Ryan Rants from iFantasy Race, for filling in, by the way. It was a great show. Make sure you're all following Ryan at iFantasy Race if you aren't. But I had, so Sunday was the Atlanta race last week, and I was supposed to fly to New York for an Action Network / Better Collective, which is Action Network's parent company, summit that we were going to be there from Sunday through Wednesday. Well, Sunday, my flight got canceled. I'm literally in mid-air from Atlanta to New Orleans, or from Vegas to New Orleans. And while I'm in mid-air, they say your New Orleans to New York leg is not delayed, just flat out canceled. So I land in New Orleans, and I'm like, all right, I got to get another flight out. Literally nothing until the next day. But it takes me a while to get through all this, and then I have to find options for the next day because I need to make sure I get there in time for at least the afternoon. So I can't just grab an afternoon flight. I have to find a morning flight out of New Orleans, and everything was really expensive. And so I'm sitting there like literally refreshing a bunch of apps and all that. I finally was able to get like one seat that opened up on a flight that was originally full. But so anyway, exhausting. Then I have a couple days of action, BC, Better Collective Summit, where I'm literally busy morning to evening, like not even evening, like going to bed both days. Then Wednesday I fly home, more travel delays, and I finally get home Wednesday night when I was supposed to get home Wednesday midday, Pacific time. So then I'm supposed to record Running Hot Thursday morning, my time. And I'm just beyond exhausted. I didn't even do my Running Hot picks until like 2 hours before we recorded, like 8 a.m. my time on, on Thursday with Stevie. And then we have to record at 10 my time. So, it's one of those weeks where and then I just slept like all whatever day it was, the rest of Thursday. And kind of just recovered and I was off my game. I still trusted my model, but I feel like I wasn't as analytical as I should have been, and I was more just impulsive. Like, I was like, oh, well, Ross Chastain at 20, like, why the hell not? He's good here, right? Like, Alex Bowman at 60, I mean, that's ridiculous. And my model was showing value on it, but, like, very often when my model's showing value, I still dive deeper because I like to make sure that I also feel good about the bets that my model is saying. And sometimes, you remember Ryan Blaney winning the 600. I went against my model, and I bet Ryan Blaney to win, and he won that race, right? So sometimes I go against my model because there's a lot more to it than just slapping some data around. Now, my model is a very, 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 I have a PhD in math. I know how to build statistical models. It's a very good start, but it's not the end-all, be-all because there aren't things you can capture in a model. And when we talk about the shift in the Chevys, the shift in the time of year where Ford's catching up, maybe Chevy's falling behind a little bit, I didn't think about that. I wasn't analytical about that not in terms of the model, but just going apart from that as well. So I don't think I hated every bet I made. I actually really liked my Ty Gibbs 2-1 top 10 bet. He started dead last, was running 11th to 13th almost the whole race when he finally got to where he was there. Pushed into the top 10, maybe a fallback, and for whatever reason, their strategy at the end, he took 2 tires and he just fell straight back. I don't know what happened to that car. He ended up 15th in green flag speed, which I think if we track position, adjust that, if we flags it, he'll probably be close to the top 10, probably 12th, 13th, 11th, somewhere in that neighborhood where he ran most of the day. So I feel very good about that bet. I don't feel bad about the post, practice qualifying bets. Or even my write-up, my DFS write-up. It was just all the early week, midweek stuff, so that's on me. As far as all the early midweek stuff, it wasn't my best foot forward, but at the same time, I have to put out content. That's my job. So it's one of those things where, that's why I say don't blindly tail me. Do your own research. Follow everybody. Figure out based off what everybody's saying, and this is a statistical thing I like to do. It's called model averaging. If you take the group think, even if I'm different from Stevie, from you, from whoever else, if we're all different, that is very good because you can find where in all those differences it kind of averages out together. So if I'm really high on somebody and somebody else is low on them, but it still averages out to value. And when I say somebody else, I mean like a lot of experts who are very good at this, who have for years shown profitability and expertise in what they do. It works out. So don't blindly tail me. Obviously follow me. Obviously, if I give out advice, if I give out picks, make sure you at least consider it because I've been doing this for a decade and I'm very good at it. It's not a brag. It's just we're all human, and I made I didn't say I made mistakes this past week, but like I wasn't at the peak of my craft because I was tired, I was exhausted, I was busy. I literally didn't even look at NASCAR until 2 hours before Running Hot. So I think I made like 1 bet or 2 bets tops. I bet Suarez plus 180 while I was at the summit that I was traveling for, and I bet Byron 14-1, just because those like really stood out to me, the Daniel Suarez bet and the William Byron bet. And I don't really feel bad about those. I know a lot of people were on Byron at 14-1. Suarez maybe was a little more iffy, but it was especially when I got back, had to record Running Hot, etc. It was just not good. So I'm whining about myself. It was not a good process for me this past week, but it's also a great learning experience. I felt really good after the race. Even though I lost every single bet, I felt really good because I felt happy that I understood that I messed up, right? And you got to celebrate your losses. Any good company will celebrate their losses as long as they learn from it. I know back when I worked at my biotech job, we had a product just failed. It just didn't come to life. It never made it past the trial phase or whatever. But because we learned so much, we had a celebration, and then we ended up launching an even better product. So it's one of those things, learn. I've learned from this past week that if I'm on another similar situation, I'll postpone running hot. I'll figure something out to where, it'll be a lot better.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just part of life. Like you and I, everyone in this industry has a life outside of this, and there is only so many hours in a day. There's so much you can do. I was actually very glad that the race got postponed to Monday because I was on vacation last weekend with a group of friends, and I didn't really make any bets. I had to hit Harvick top 10 minus 163 because that just absolutely stood out to me as not making any sense. But I didn't make any other bets till my mind was clear on Monday, and then I was finally like, okay, I'm hitting Truex plus 450. I'm hitting Harvick top 5, top 3.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, and as we always say, it's perfectly fine not to bet. If you can't think of this clearly and you're kind of just, throwing shit at a wall, it might work out sometimes, but that's definitely not the approach to take with this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And here's the other thing. I'm ready as hell for Pocono. I am so ready. I feel on my game. I was pumped. Like, dude, I'm so ready for Pocono. I know we talked before the pod started. Like, Pocono is one of my favorite races, even though most people hate it. I love Pocono. I think it's a really fun race. There's a lot of strategy that gets involved. I think it's a very easy track to analyze outside of the randomness of the strategy. I think it's a very capable race. So I feel great about Pocono. I'm sharp. I'm rested. I'm ready to go. We're back to like regular classic RotoDoc. So hopefully we won't get shut out this week. It can happen. Even in your best, sharpest weeks, you can get shut out. That's the nature of betting a pretty random sport. But also, I tend to bet a lot of plus money bets, and it's a lot easier to lose things when you're an underdog than when you're a favorite.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Moving
on to my wine about it. This might surprise you. It'll probably surprise a lot of people. I don't have anything major to complain about this week, and this might be the first time ever that I don't have anything. But since we do this segment pretty much every episode, I just want to talk. I want to point out these crew chiefs and their strategies, and I'm desperately wanting these guys to explain to me what the hell they were thinking. Specifically, Rodney Childers and Kevin Harvick.
Saw your tweet.
With their, I directly tweeted him because he said I made a couple bad calls early, and I was like, can you please explain the call late in the race where you kept Harvick out super long, but then cut it short and pitted him anyway.
All the way along. Yeah, it made no sense.
Like, obviously Harvick got that fourth place finish, but that was not a good call. That was an Alan Gustafson call right there.
Yes.
And they got bailed out by that late caution. And I just want to know, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe we're missing something. But I want to know what the hell you're thinking there, Mr. Childers, on that strategy call, because it did not make any sense to me. And obviously, I think they had a slow pit stop too. They might have had a loose wheel or something happened. I know they had, I think it was like a 20 or not a 20, but like a 16-second pit stop on that final stop too. So it wasn't good. Mm-hmm. But man, and we saw that with I think at the Chicago Road Course, we saw a lot of crew chiefs just unable to think of basic strategy, and it's kind of like, what the hell are you doing? I don't know. And then even in this New Hampshire race, we saw that. On a short run, 2 tires versus 4 tires didn't make a ton of difference. And, people were still just making just weird calls. And I guess that's my whine about it. Like, obviously we see some of these crazy calls work out once in a while. And when you're when you're staying out on a fuel run, you're hoping for this exact scenario to happen, and it can happen. Like it certainly can, but there's some of these calls where it's like it just doesn't make any sense, and I don't know. Maybe it's because I was so heavily invested in Harvick that I was paying I was hyper fixated on him. Like, what the hell are you doing? Because and of course, it was about to be a Ryan Blaney at Martinsville situation for me because obviously my biggest bet of the weekend was Harvick top 10. And before that late caution that they got bailed out on and then they stayed out, he was going to finish 11th. Like, if that race ran green, Harvick was finishing 11th.
Because he was like 6 seconds behind 10th at that point just because of that slow pit stop. He was not going to catch 10th if that thing goes green.
No.
And actually, I thought maybe your whine about it would be about the very last caution, because I know you tweeted that shouldn't have been a caution, the Christopher Bell one. I actually thought that should have been a caution. It was the one before that I was like, that should not have been a caution. So, the second time I saw the Bell caution, I was like, okay, that should have been. But what was the one before that? Like, Alex Bowman got hit by Ty Gibbs or something, kind of spun sideways, and then just went straight forward. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's not as egregious as brake smoke caution, but that was I thought that caution, the first of the two at the end there, was pretty bad. And let's just also point out, Joey Logano restarted in the inside line on that first restart, then chose the outside line, shit the bed on both restarts. That was terrible. And I know Truex got great jumps, but Logano did terribly on both restarts.
I will. Specifically that last restart, I honestly think that should have been reviewed. That Truex got away with one there, I think.
At the same time, Logano did horrible because the inside line still did fine compared to him. And the whole point that he took the outside in the second one was the inside line was much harder to restart on. And if you look, I understand Truex played games, but the inside line versus the outside line, Logano did not do as well as the inside line.
And I want to say that Logano, like, historically, has just not been a great restarter. If I'm remembering right, looking at all that data.
There's a few of them out there that are like, excuse me, that are like that. Logano, I think Chase Elliott, obviously, we talk about him a lot. There's one or two others I noticed. I think Ty Gibbs had a bunch of terrible restarts as well, at least in this race. I don't know if that's a theme with him. But I know, obviously, because I bet on him, I was paying attention to that. He had a bunch of pretty rough restarts. So, yeah, weird race. And then Ricky Stenhouse Jr., right? Like, they had that no tire call. He fell like a lap down, almost 2 laps down, I think, at one point. Rebounded to finish 18th. So, for as bad a strategy call that was, kudos to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for his rebound, keeping his head in the game. Because the reason I thought about it is because I remember last year when I had a Ricky Stenhouse Jr. bet, he was having a bunch of bad restarts. So, he's having a decent season. Obviously, the last 3 or 4 or 5 races have not been great for him, but they haven't been complete disasters outside of Gateway and the Charlotte Street Course.
He had a great car at Gateway, if I remember right.
Yeah. He just ended up DNFing and finished 32nd.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. But
one of those.
But that's gonna do it for Wine About It this week. As usual, presented by Louvabella Winery. Make sure you check them out. If you don't have them in stores around you, you can get them shipped directly to you. As always, Nick is recommending the bourbon barrel aged Merlot. But we are on to Pocono, the 21st race of the season. 6 more races until his playoff cutoff line. Nick, I know you love Pocono. Last year we saw something a little crazy. Chase Elliott won at Pocono despite leading 0 laps. Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch got disqualified and sent to the back of the line. Chase Elliott, like I said, won the race. Overall, the last 5 races at Pocono have seen 5 different winners. We had Chase Elliott, we had Alex Bowman, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Denny Hamlin. If you remember, Kyle Larson was set to win one of those races, I believe, and then he blew a tire going into the last lap. I think that's the one Bowman won, right? Yeah. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
Something
that was
like
the one Bowman won because Larson blew a tire.
Yeah, but definitely, Pocono is as you alluded to earlier. It's a love or hate track, and I know you love it. we've seen, and it is more likely before the stage cautions came in, but we've seen fuel mileage come into play here not last year, but 2 years ago when Kyle Busch won here. He had transmissions issues where if he would have had any caution, he would not have won the race. He wouldn't have even had a chance. Went green. He ended up winning. Pocono is always interesting. It's always going to have a solid place in my heart because it's one of the few tracks that I've had a 10,000 plus day on DraftKings at. So I'm always going to like Pocono for that. But I know you have some takes this week on what we're going to expect at Pocono, or what we can expect at Pocono, and maybe some insight into, as you alluded to earlier, Fords. So what are you thinking about Pocono this weekend?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel very strongly that Denny Hamlin is the favorite. My model says that, and very strongly that Kyle Larson, Rowdy, and Truex are 2, 3, 4. For me, I think it's Larson, Rowdy, Truex in my model. So I feel very strongly about that. My model has Ryan Blaney 5th, and I thought that was very interesting because I don't pick my model. I don't choose the variables. It selects it for me. And one of the things it selected was fastest laps at Pocono, and Ryan Blaney apparently turns a bunch of them. He has like 6% fastest laps over the last 4 Pocono races, I think it is. But I also I've been on the Ford physics angle all year. And I think almost without fail, I've nailed their physics. This is set up so well for Ford, I believe. So I actually think my model's undervaluing the Fords just based off of, again, physics, aerodynamics, mechanical grip, intuition, that kind of stuff. We've talked about it a gazillion times. The nose, compared to last year, is designed to reduce the downforce because they were a little high on downforce in the simulations compared to Chevy and Toyota. So it reduced the downforce a little bit. But as a result, it also reduced the drag. Well, Pocono has the longest straightaways in all of NASCAR. You know what is good for long straightaways? A low drag. Low drag. You want to go flying down that straightaway. The other thing is Pocono doesn't have high banking. So you don't need the downforce like you need at a 1.5 miles that's banked or those kinds of tracks. You still need downforce, don't get me wrong, but it's more like mechanical grip that you need. And the other thing about the lack of downforce is it's not going to be as hot. Pocono on Sunday projects 77 degrees, and it's going to be 55-60% humidity. Good things that increase air density that help downforce, which is where the Fords are lacking a little bit compared to last year, which is why they fell behind. Also, let's talk about that shift. Ford has made gains, obviously. They had a really good race here at New Hampshire on the low downforce package, which should hurt them. Now, we're in the intermediate normal package, whatever you want to call it, which is higher. It's still not high downforce. It's a 4-inch spoiler, which is kind of around where we averaged 2016 or so to 2018. Closer to 2016, but you get the point. Like, it's not a high downforce package, but is higher than the low downforce package. So that helps them. So this is a very, very, very important race, I think, for Ford, and for what I think we can expect from Ford as far as like just analyzing them across the rest of the season. Because Michigan is going to be another track that comes up that is high speed, and low drag is going to help a lot there. And then obviously we've got a few more ovals, 1.5 mile ovals, especially in the playoffs. So going to be really interesting. But I feel very strongly that this is a physics good track for Ford. And so I took them to win 4-1. I think this is my bet of the year, is Ford 4-1 to win. Are they likely to win? No. But as long as they're competitive, they have maybe Blaney, Harvick, Logano, Keselowski, a couple of those guys contending for the win, it's a good bet at 4-1. It was weird. I didn't tell a soul that I betted at 4-1. And an hour later, it was plus 350, plus 355. And I was like, because I was saving that right up for the morning. I didn't tell a soul. So I was really mad that I guess somebody else thought of that angle too. Because I literally didn't tell a soul. I didn't mention the Almirola bet other than to you, and I didn't mention the Blaney bet other than to you, because we talk, right? So
Right.
it's one of those things where somebody else must have the same feelings about Ford, because I didn't even tell you about the Ford bet, 4-1. It was just one of those, and I put 2.5 units on it, not because I think it's going to win, right? It probably should be more like plus 300, but plus 400, plus 300 is a very big edge. Now, my model says it should be plus 350, plus 355 in that range, right where it is now. But my intuition, the Blaney intuition from the Coca-Cola 600 kind of thing, says it should be even lower. But my model will not show value on it beyond like plus 350, plus 355.
Yeah, you mentioned the Almirola bet, and that's, you look at Almirola, you look at the last 7 races here at Pocono. He hasn't finished worse than 16th. He has 2 top 5s during that span. He opened at 200-1 at Superbook, which was not unbelievable, but it's like they are severely, downgrading, or they severely downgraded Almirola's expectations for this race, because
especially coming off the hell of a good race he just had at New Hampshire, another flat track, and Pocono's flat. And not only did he have those 2 top 5s, he led the most laps in one of those races. He was the dominant car by a lot in one of those races.
Yeah, he led 61 laps in that race, finished third. He was second in stage 1, first in stage 2.
Yep, stage win.
And Almirola has been a solid qualifier this year, and if we can talk about track position and stuff like that, it's important. It's very important. The last two races he was on the pole at Atlanta, and he started third at New Hampshire. So definitely like that Almirola bet. And if your Ford theory ends up being true, you got to keep an eye on someone like Kevin Harvick. Always solid at Pocono. Look at the last 13 races here. 12 of them have ended with Harvick in the single digits, including a win back in 2020. Top 4s in like, I'm trying to count here quick. 1, 2. Over the last 12, 8 out of the last 12 top 4 finishes for Harvick here at Pocono. He was 8th and 4th in the 2 stages here last year. I don't remember what happened to him. I'll have to pull up iFantasy Race, but he finished 27th. I think he was in that wreck with Chastain, wasn't he? I want to say that. I want to say that was why. Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah, that was the one where Denny Hamlin kind of squeezed him. Didn't touch him. Remember, that was not the payback, but it was still kind of payback because he ran him tight, and Chastain spun out and hit Harvick. Yeah, that was that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting, and like I said, with not only with value with betting top 10s, top 5s to win with the Fords, but I'm going to really be looking into qualifying odds, because if sports books are super heavy on the Toyotas and Chevys, there's no reason why a Ford can't get up there and win it. Like, this is a big track. This 2.5 mile track. When we look back at the big tracks this year, the Daytonas, the Talladegas, who had the speed? Ford, because there's something going on with their car and their engines that they're putting out the raw speed, and even though,
do you remember
Pocono
even the Coca-Cola 600? Ford had 2 of the top 3 starting spots. They didn't win the pole, but they were second and third. And Ford has definitely gained ground and has especially performed at these higher speed tracks. Right there with you on qualifying. I might actually bet qualifying this week, and I hate betting qualifying.
I was gonna say, yeah, you absolutely hate it. So the fact that you're considering it is definitely noteworthy. And I don't know when those odds come out. I think usually it's like Thursday, but
actually they're out right now at Caesars. Holy shit! We might have to shimmy up some things here. All right, we got. Let's see. As far as Fords, we have Blaney at 10, Logano at Harvick at 15, Logano at 18, Keselowski at 30, Almirola at 60, Buescher at 60. Preece at 200, Briscoe at 300, McDowell at 300, Austin Cindric at 300. I'm betting some goddamn Ford qualifiers right now. Oh my God.
I cannot navigate this new Caesars app, by the way. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. I'm not seeing it on my end. That sucks.
I was having issues with it earlier, but that was because I was in a bad service area. I had to take my cat to the vet, and it's been fine for me. Holy shit. Like, we've seen Briscoe contend for the pole at some of these races this year. He's not had some great races, but there's times he's contended for pole. We've seen Eric Almirola, obviously. I don't think Michael McDowell at 300 is necessarily worth a look, but he's made the top 10 in some of these races recently.
Looking at the last 5
Austin
Pocono races.
Austin Cindric 300 to 1. Like, the dude has been on pole more than 1 in 300 races in his career at normal tracks.
I'm really liking that Almirola 60 to 1. I like that because, looking at the last 5 races at Pocono, who has the 4th best average starting position? Eric Almirola, behind Kyle Larson, Kurt Busch, and Kyle Busch.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Briscoe, what I'm making a note here. Almirola, Briscoe, what was the other 3? Oh, Cindric. Holy shit. All right. Oh my God. Jordan, get your bets in before I destroy the lines.
They're not available for me. I don't know why. Yeah.
Oh no.
Looking at what'd you say Buescher's odds were? So the highest qualifying Ford at Pocono last year was Buescher in 5th. What's Buescher's odds at?
Buescher is 60 to 1.
Okay, right there with Almirola.
Oh my God, this is insane. This is insane. Why do we always have like one of these shows like a month or every month or two where like we just have to start betting?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really liking that Almirola. He was 2nd in qualifying at Talladega as well. Looking back at, the bigger tracks. Are you trying to talk? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. I'm so excited. I keep clicking it and then double clicking it by accident. What do you think about like Joey though and Blaney? Like obviously they're the best, and you're getting them at what 10 and 18. I don't think Harvick as much. He doesn't tend to be a pole guy. But what do you think about like Joey or Blaney?
I think sportsbooks overall are undervaluing Logano. I think Blaney's right there, kind of where I expected him there at that 10. But I like Logano there at 18 for sure. I mean, we've seen him do it before. He does. It's 2011 and 2012. When do you remember when Pocono got repaved? I'm trying to remember. Was it like in 2019?
I have it. Let me. No, it was before that. I have
it was like
sheet on that.
It was like 2011 or something.
Yeah, let me find my spreadsheet on that. Literally, my search bar is freezing right now. In my folder. I'm just going to sort by name, I think, because this is being the dumbest thing ever. I don't remember if I put an underscore between it or not. I think it's just one word. I have a spreadsheet. It's called NAS Track, but I don't know if it's NAS Track with an underscore between NAS and track, or if it's just NAS Track. One word.
It was so they repaved it after the August 2011 race. So 2012 would be the first year.
There it is. Yeah, I just found the spreadsheet. So let me just double confirm with you. Pocono 2011 was repave.
Mm-hmm. And the first driver to win the pole and win the race at the new Pocono, Joey Logano. He sure has a knack for new tracks, doesn't he?
He really does, and I don't know
new.
what it is about that, but he certainly does. What do you think of Keselowski at 30?
I can't go against it, especially with how Buescher's like RFK has decent speed in qualifying this year. Like I said, Buescher was the highest qualifying Ford here at Pocono last year.
I'm typing in all my bets. I'm doing it on the web right now. It's easy. But let's see. Briscoe's 300 to 1. So if I bet $10, that's 3,000. Holy shit. There we go.
I can't wait for this Ford angle.
Oh my god. Okay, so
be right
here's my
again.
Here's my breakdown. I'm betting a unit on Blaney, a unit on Joey, half a unit on Keselowski because he's 30 to 1, quarter unit on Buescher, quarter unit on Almirola, and a tenth of a unit on Briscoe, Cindric, and McDowell.
I like that.
There it is. And so if I lose, I'm out 3.3 units if one of those Fords doesn't win. Now, I didn't do Harvick, and I did not do Preece as far as like decently good drivers, for Fords. And I didn't do Gilliland and the Rick Ware cars, but I have bets on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 14 Fords. So not the 2 Ware cars, not Harvick, not Gilliland, not Harrison Burton, and not somebody else I'm forgetting. Oh, Preece. Preece. So there it is. I'm betting 8 of the 14 Fords in this race.
I like it. Yeah, those odds, you just can't pass it up. It's one of those situations. Like you said, it happens like once every 3 weeks, I feel like, on this show. We see odds, you just can't pass them up. Specifically talking about Pocono, though, what kind of similar tracks are you bringing in this week? Are you looking at when it comes to, analyzing Pocono?
Pocono, if a driver has some Indy history and a little bit of Michigan, not very much, but a little bit of Michigan for the horsepower.
That was another bad thing about losing the Indy oval race is we lost the correlation between Pocono and Indy because there's quite a bit there.
Yeah. Michigan actually grades out basically as the best correlated track based off average running position because so here's the weird thing. You can do a model from Pocono's, or you can do correlations from Pocono's perspective, but what you really want to do is do it from all the other tracks' perspective. We've talked about this before because Bristol's never going to correlate very well with anything if you do it from the other track's perspective. But you do it from Bristol's perspective. From Bristol's perspective, where is Pocono? And Pocono's not very high. So if I do from Michigan's perspective, Pocono is the highest from Michigan's perspective. Not in terms of it being number 1 for Michigan. It's like 4th, I think, from Michigan's perspective, Pocono's 4th. But of all the tracks, 4th is the highest ranking Pocono has. So what I'm saying? So of all the tracks, Pocono ranks the highest for Michigan, from Michigan's perspective. And it's only 4th best. Like there's 3 other tracks that correlate more with Michigan from Michigan's perspective. But even from Pocono's perspective, the top 3 are Kansas, Vegas, Michigan, which are high-speed tracks. So instead of taking Kansas and Vegas, I'm just going to take Michigan because it's the highest speed of the tracks. And then obviously Indy, right? So that's it. That's all I'm taking. And Michigan is weighted pretty low in my model. And again, the algorithm's picking this, so I'm not doing that. But that actually hurts McDowell in my model, which is another reason to like McDowell even more, is because if Michigan really doesn't matter that much, even though it is in my model, McDowell potentially could be even better because he's been awful at Michigan throughout his career.
Yeah, and if you were to value Michigan a little bit high, remember who won Michigan last year? Kevin Harvick.
Yep.
So, if anybody looking for confirmation bias to be like Kevin Harvick this weekend, I'm kind of pointing to myself here. Michigan, Kevin Harvick won Michigan last year. But yeah, so looking at, obviously we had the repave, but still Denny Hamlin's a 6-time winner here. Like you said, he's your favorite heading into the weekend. Couple of bad runs here these last 2 races. Bad finishes on paper, I'll say that. Still, he has not had a driver rating under 100 since 2018 at this racetrack. Did he win last year, or did Busch win? Technically, before they got disqualified, I forget. I want to say it was Hamlin.
I think it was Hamlin and then Busch, and then obviously Elliott. And that was such a weird thing with all the betting stuff. And yeah, I know. Wasn't there another betting deal recently where Greg looked into all this stuff? But I know that was the first one last year, was the double disqualification. And we started looking at every book's house rules. But I know Greg looked into another race recently's house rules. Oh, the Xfinity race that got shortened before halfway. Yeah, for Chicago street course. NASCAR did everything they could. They couldn't do anything about that. And I guess it's very good for them that they had this except in rare instance rule, because that worked out. But it was Hamlin and Busch last year, 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
And my model, okay, so just to further my McDowell point, he finished 6th last year, but he really finished 8th, obviously. My model doesn't use finishing position. It uses things like green flag speed, driver rating, all these other metrics that we have from loop data. So it doesn't care whether McDowell finished 6th or 8th, because that's not in the model. So those disqualifications aren't affecting my model. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. Who else you got your eye on this week outside of the Fords? You got any long shots? Maybe like a Bubba Wallace.
I like Bubba. I like Reddick. I wouldn't say long shots, but definitely in the if they're in the right price range. So I'm waiting for Reddick to move. Hopefully he moves longer, and then maybe I'll take him. Agree with you. I like Bubba Wallace. I think I might take him potentially at his price. Potentially not. My model is showing value. With the Ford thing, I'm a little more hesitant, So I think I want to see, before I commit to a whole bunch of outrights, because I don't want to get into that business of betting 8 outrights every race. I want to make sure I have more than solid value on somebody like a Reddick or a Bubba Wallace. And it sucks because, again, we're betting guys that are 14, 16, whatever. Eric Almirola is 200, or Blaney was 16 when I bet him. Bubba Wallace is 30 right now, the longest you can get him. But, it's one of those things where, it's still very likely Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, or Kyle Larson win this race, and Ross Chastain's great here. So, there's 5 drivers I would say very likely are going to win this race, but we're still just betting value. That's all we can do is bet value. And if we're betting a guy who's 16-1, he only needs to win better than 1 in 17 times to make money, I know but just to the average listener, it's probably going to be a losing week as far as outrights, but all we need to do if we bet a bunch of 14, 16, 20s in various markets is to hit one of them if we size our bets right and still be profitable. And then when we hit 2 or 3, we have a really good week like I had for the Chicago street course, or like I had for Nashville. I absolutely cleaned up on those. I think I had a good week at either one of Sonoma or Gateway. Can't remember. Obviously, Blaney at Charlotte. I wrecked that one. So, I had a month and a half, 5 weeks, where 4 of the 5 races were really good, or 5 of the 6 races were really good, I think. 4 of the 5. And then Atlanta and New Hampshire these past 2 weeks have been really bad. And those are the swings. It's always funny when people jump off your bandwagon after 1 or 2 bad races, because it's like, did you not just see the month and a half before that? It was pretty damn good. But sorry, just a little rant there because I've seen a few things on various social media about my betting abilities, and it's always funny because I laugh at it. I'm like, you're not allowed a downswing. You're not allowed 2 bad weeks. You're gonna hop off the bandwagon of my last decade of work. Okay, sounds good. See you.
Exactly.
Total random rant there. There's a wine.
Yeah,
about
just
it.
yeah, exactly. Frustrating. And what's funny is I was thinking if I could go back and redo my whine about it this week, it would be about Christopher Bell and how he doesn't dominate races at all ever, and it just irritates me. But Kyle Busch is a guy that I have my eye on this week because I'm very interested to see what he's going to do, not only with the potential fall off of Chevy, but the fact that he was so good here last year, and Ryan Stevens with Win the Race, he tweeted, I saw earlier today, he's like, Kyle Busch has been better in the 8 in an intermediate package than he was in the next gen car in a Toyota. When he gets tracks he does well on in this package, he's crushed this year. Even better when we see Reddick was good in the 8 last year. You mentioned Kyle Busch. You're pretty high on Kyle Busch this week, and obviously Kyle Busch has a hell of a history here at Pocono. He's won 4 of the last 10 races here, top 5 in. I'm not even gonna 1, 2, 3, 7 of the last 10. Like, very solid racer here. Obviously led the most laps in this race last year. He was in a Toyota. I'm interested though to see what kind of speed he has, because it's so. I don't want to say like hit or miss, but I feel like it's kind of hit or miss this season in that Richard Childress Racing. Yeah, there we go. Man, I was struggling there.
I feel you.
But
he was
looking at,
he was fast but bad this past weekend. Like, he had good practice times, but that car was so loose. You saw it in practice, you saw it in qualifying, you saw it in the race. That car just it was evil. Even though it had speed, it was evil.
One good thing for people that want to get behind Kyle Busch this week, though, is that Austin Dillon actually had a pretty good race here at Pocono last year, as did Reddick in that 8 car. But Austin Dillon came home 10th last year, started 15th. He had a driver rating of 80.6, which if you're comparing to what he's doing this year, that's pretty solid. So yeah, I think there's definite reason to be high on Kyle Busch this week and see if he can add another win to the column, to the win column, and join William Byron there with 4 wins this year. But
that'd be
other
wild.
than that,
Kyle Busch with 4 wins. I wasn't low on Kyle Busch this year in terms of, like, I didn't think he was going to be bad. Well, no, I mean, we both would have taken his under on his win prop, but I wasn't like he's going to be terrible. I just thought it was a downgrade for sure. And I still think it is, but he's definitely had some ceiling performances, maybe a little bit of luck, but kudos to them. Great job. And also kudos to people that were higher on him than me and you, because they really should have.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be more of a downgrade than it's been.
Yeah, I definitely think there's quite a bit of luck involved with where he's at this year, but at the same time, he's leading the series in top 10 finishes. He's right up there in top 5 finishes. Like, no matter what you say, he's got 3 wins and he's getting the finishes. So, and I've always been a Kyle Busch fan, so I like to see it. I like to see him run well. Plus, it's really showing how awful Austin Dillon is. You look at how bad Austin Dillon is running this year compared to what Kyle Busch is doing in the not the exact same car, but the same organization's car. It's fun to see that. Mentioned, Bubba Wallace as a potential sleeper pick this week, 8th and 5th over the last 2 Pocono races. He also had a 14th place finish here in 2021 with 23:11. Driver rating of over 80 in the last 3 races, which, if you remember back to Bubba Wallace and what he did at Pocono when he was with Richard Petty, awful, just never good here. Plus, that year that he had a brake failure and just slammed into the turn 1 wall after coming down the straightaway or the front stretch full speed. Any other not long shots but sleepers that are catching your eye this week? I know we've talked about a ton, but
yeah, I don't know, not really. I mean, you mentioned Bubba Wallace and those two Indy runs that he had, especially the one where he finished third. That was so good. But obviously, I said Michael McDowell in the write-up. That line, those lines are probably long gone at this point. But hoping FanDuel comes through the top 10 there. That would be like my only other thing. Got all those bets in. That was pure panic mode on the qualifying bets. Like you said, we get one of these a month or something. Always a fun time. It was just pure chaos right there, trying to record a pod and get your bets in and all that fun stuff. But you can't track qualifying bets, but I gave them out live on the pod. You see the odds, so have the bet slips if you need them. You know, people always want to question that, but I don't really care. It's just funny. Dude, I'm so excited for Pocono. I think it's gonna be a great race. We've got 3 drivers that we mentioned. You know, Denny Hamlin, 4 drivers actually. Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, and Kyle Larson, who are rightly, I think, favored. And then there's a drop back to another tier. I think Ross Chastain is very solid. Chase Elliott obviously technically won the race last year. Not physically, but technically won the race last year. And then we've got the Ford angle. And we also have Reddick and Bubba. It's going to be an awesome race. Daniel Suarez is really good here. Remember Joe Gibbs Racing days? Even with Stewart Haas Racing. He's been pretty good here. So it could be a really fun race. It could be a really competitive race. And when it's a really competitive race, things can happen. And you know, the 16-1 guy can win. The 30-1 guy can win. The 200-1 guy can win. And we're hitting that point in the year where you and I both like really heat up, right? I know I had two complete whiffs. I'm discounting Atlanta. That's whatever. Past weekend was terrible for me. I feel like I was very bad with, not with my process, but just very bad with impulse versus analysis. And then, so I guess that's process, but in general, we've been heating up since the 600, and this is, I'm so excited for Pocono. I don't have a ton more to say because
me neither.
I already feel like I have a good grasp, but you bringing up those qualifying bets was something.
Yeah. Shout out Stephen Malazzi. He's making.
Yes,
he's going to attempt to make that's what reminded me. He's attempting to make the truck race this week. Back in that 22. I don't know if he's locked in or not. He might be locked in. But good luck to him. And what they're doing. But who's your pick to win here for Pocono? You going to go with a favorite or are you going to go with...
This race is so tough to pick. Honestly, it's really tough to pick. You're picking Chastain, right? Are you changing that?
Depends who you pick. Remember the last time I picked Ross Chastain on this pod, he won. I picked him in Nashville.
I'm very unsure about it, but I'm gonna pick Rowdy, even though I really like the Fords. I'm gonna pick Rowdy. I have a good track record, I think, picking Rowdy on this pod for some reason.
I know you pick him a lot. I'll say that. Going back to last year, but you picked him at Talladega and he won, and he finished 7th at Darlington when you picked him. I'm not gonna do Chastain.
Fake out.
I'm not proud of this pick, but I'm going Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all.
I think Hamlin takes it. I want to see Fords do well, but I think Toyotas have the speed, and I still have the mindset of, you know, these especially these tracks where there's only one race a year. With this new car, I don't think much is going to change, and I think it's going to be Hamlin, Truex, and Chastain as the fastest cars again.
I feel like,
or as Kyle Busch last year.
I feel like this is a very important Ford track. This is such a big track, and it's not like it's so different because of these massively long straights that I think the low drag is going to help the Fords. I'm not like crazy high on the Fords. Like I said, I think they should be between plus 300 and plus 350 to win. So I'm not sitting here like Ford's going to win, but I think Ford is going to do better than maybe model projections or looking at this year's data and last year's data is going to say.
Yeah. It's yeah. I for the first time in a while, I think I'm excited to see Pocono, which is definitely saying something.
For the first time since the last race, I'm excited to see Pocono.
Yeah. But yeah, so you got Kyle Busch. I have Denny Hamlin.
Who's
Two
your random
fastest
fantasy
cars
pick?
here last year. Is it back up? Is it working again?
That was a joke.
Oh,
That was a joke.
I can't keep
I just
up
miss
with,
it.
with
I miss it.
anything
I miss it,
on-
man.
on
I miss
Twitter
random
working
fantasy.
or not, or them limiting it, or having
Oh,
to pay
dude, Twitter was
$8
so
a month
broken
to DM
for me.
people, or-
It finally like started working for me about 3 or 4 days ago again. Like when I say working, like obviously it technically worked because I could tweet, but like fully functional working a few days ago, maybe 3 to 5 days ago, started like actually functionally working for me again. I could use the search feature, for example. Things weren't showing up out of order on my own personal tweets. Like I would go to like my page, see what I tweeted, and they'd be out of order. And I'm like, why is the one I tweeted 4 hours ago ahead of the one I tweeted 10 minutes ago on my timeline for myself when I go to my own page? It's weird, but that's a whole nother story. Thanks, Elmo.
Thanks, Elmo. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, shout out to Brent Buckner in Tennessee. Wanted to give you a shout out. I got a DM the other week that you're a big fan of this show, so I just wanted to. If you made it this far in the show, thank you for listening. Thank you for enjoying our content. Whether you might hate it, you might just like to hear us bitch, but
Yeah.
shout out to you. Thanks,
I
thanks
love
everybody
bitching.
that listens and continues to listen throughout the year. I know this point of the year, the listenership goes down quite a bit because it's summer, everybody's busy, and obviously
NFL's
we've taken
coming
some
up
weeks off here recently.
The
and-
grind.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
But yeah, the one we had on 2 weeks ago, all results look good. We'll just say that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I got for Pocono. And we'll be back next week to talk about what is the next Richmond. Oh, I love Richmond. See, this is such a good section of the year.
I just want to say shout outs to the person who thought I had moved on from Stacking Dennys. I don't know if you saw that comment.
Yeah,
That was hilarious.
I saw that.
That was so funny. I actually laughed. Like I was like actually laughing. I'm pulling it up right now. It was like, sorry to see that RotoDoc has left the show. Hope whatever future endeavors he has works out.
Yeah, I saw that. And I'm like, maybe.
My future endeavors are to keep doing Stacking Dennys every week. We just had, a medical thing and then a work thing come up. So it is what it is. That's life. We do this podcast for fun, for free, because we love doing it. But our actual lives take precedence. And I know if you ever have something that comes up, either somebody will fill in for you or we just won't do the show or whatever. And that's how it is. So, but again, shout outs to Ryan Rantz, iFantasy Race, for filling in for me last week. Great job on the show there.
Yep. Yeah, make sure you're following our iFantasy Race. Sign up for their stuff. Like I said last week, hardest working guy in Fantasy NASCAR. It's insane. But yeah, good luck to everybody's bets this weekend at Pocono, especially yours, Nick, and the amount that you have and the long shots that you have. I know there's one more crack for the end. And yeah, I really hope next week we're talking like we did after the Coca-Cola 600, where Nick was right about the Ford advantage again. So
I hope at least the Ford advantage is there for qualifying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's going to do it for us. Good luck and enjoy this weekend's race at Pocono, the highpoint.com 400. See you guys.